All right, we're live, we're recording.
Mhm.
Welcome everybody. I know there's only a few of you now, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna start trickling in. I'm getting pumped. Larry, glad to have you here.
Thank you, Steve. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing real well. I've got I don't know if you hear it, but I've got I started listening to these focus playlists on Apple Music, and for the most part it's all instrumental. A lot of it sounds very like techno with, just that kind of beat.
Yep.
Um, so hopefully you're not like hearing that, but let me tell you, I am focused.
I am not hearing a thing.
That's great. That's
Matter of
excellent.
fact, I'm glad you talked about that because I just muted my phone because we all know if the phone's either going to ring or I can also probably guarantee you UPS or FedEx is probably going to arrive with a package and my dogs are going to go nuts. It's just inevitable whenever you
That's
start
just how it
talking. That's
goes.
what
Yeah.
happens. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly.
Why would it go any other way?
I appreciate you having us here today.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm super pumped. So we're gonna talk about what are we talking about, Larry? You got a
Oh,
framework.
yeah, we're going to talk about what happens when you price too early and why MSPs or some MSPs are, potentially losing some margin before the sale even starts. So hopefully it's going to resonate with some folks and they'll learn something from this.
I'd like to think it will.
I
Now, I
would
gotta
too.
say, price too early. You can talk about price too early?
You can talk about price too early. Yes, sir. Matter of fact, it usually creates an issue for the MSP when they do that. And that's what
Oh.
we're going to hopefully prevent.
So what you teach us today, can we reverse engineer it when we go buy our next car?
It'd be interesting if you could, but some reason I don't think you're going to be able to, but who knows? We might be able to apply those concepts.
We're gonna give it a shot. We're gonna give
Why
it a
not?
shot. All
Why
right.
not?
So, Larry, I don't know if your deck has it. Can you tell us a little bit about you? Like, why on earth should we trust this guy who has a license plate that says "Pig Suey" behind him?
Come on, hey, I'm a Razorback. I was born and raised in Arkansas, and I've got two of my three kids went to University of Arkansas, so it's been a painful 15 years, not only financially, Uh, but our football team has kind of, not been everything I wished it would be or like it was when I was a kid growing up, when we had
Fair.
a pretty powerhouse team, but hey, basketball is looking pretty good, but, we're not here to talk about Arkansas, we're here to talk about MSPs and all of that, and, if you'd like, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
Yes, please do.
Let's, make sure I've got the right one. How are we looking? Because 'Cause I'm not sure
I'll let you. I see your slide deck and
fantastic.
a much more put together version of you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Back before I grew the winter beard and all of that good stuff, you know? Um, but anyway, all right. Are we ready to go with this?
Go for it, man. Hop on in.
Cool
Let's see what
deal.
you run.
Cool deal. Well, I can't see who all's out there, so hopefully I've got some friendly peeps out in the audience. Appreciate you guys joining us. And Steve, appreciate you guys over at Alternative Payments in hosting this and bringing us on. And hopefully, as we go through this, like I said, maybe we'll learn a little something as we go. Again, I'm not so sure we can go apply it to buying a car, but you just never know. Just never know. But, you also asked if I had a slide that kind of introduced who I am. I didn't put that in here other than just my ugly mug up there. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Larry Meador. I am the channel chief over at Cavelo, and I've been here a little bit over a year, but I've been in the channel now for 24 years. So, yeah, really, I'm 29 years old, but this is what the channel does to you. It kind of causes premature gray and all of that good stuff. No, 29 was a long time ago for me, as we can probably all tell, but I have been doing this for quite some time across several different companies. And I've learned a few things over the years. And matter of fact, what I'm going to talk about today, I actually kind of learned from one of my larger MSP partners. They're quite large. They do over $100 million in revenue. And I've sat down with them one day over a couple of drinks and just said, how do you guys, how have you built this business as big as it is? What's your success? How do your salespeople go out and do this stuff? And that's where the conversation about, pricing too early came in, and how, some MSPs, not all, but some MSPs are maybe throwing that price out there a little bit too early and costing themselves some margin before the sale even starts. So that's what we're here for. And, what we're going to talk about, this is, it's a concept, it's theory. You're gonna have to adapt it to your own business because everybody's business is a little bit different. Adapt it to your customers, but hopefully what we talk about here today will at least kinda open your mind up to thinking about, how you develop a deal a little bit differently, and maybe it's a different way in what you're doing currently, or who knows, maybe you're already doing this, and if so, you're ahead of the game because again, I talk with MSPs all the time at the events that I'm at, on the phone, different calls like that. And, some of them definitely, I think, are going down the right path and doing all the right things. But then there's some every once in a while that you come across that's kind of new to it. And they're the ones that kind of need a little hand holding and some stuff like that. And that's exactly what this is for. So, enough rambling from me. Let's kind of get this show on the road. And we're going to start with a quick poll. So, after you've quoted a price to your customer or to your prospect, how many of you have had that customer come back and say, "Oh, I'm paying something else. Can you match our current provider?" Or, "Wow, that's kind of expensive. What if we pull part of this away and reduce it a little bit?" Or, "How about we just start with maybe a couple of licenses and then we'll expand a little bit later?" Or, flat out, "You're way too expensive. Let's wait." Well, my gut says probably all of you have experienced at least one of these. Maybe you've experienced all of them. I know I have in my years of doing this. And you
All
want
of
to
them
know,
have experienced 2 of them, Larry.
have you really? Which
Yeah.
ones?
Can you match our current provider? What if we remove X?
Yep, absolutely. Those are usually the first two that come out there. And you want to know why? It's because you're putting a price out there too early. You haven't established value. You've just kind of thrown it out there. And that, again, the goal for today is to kind of help you discover where things are breaking down and killing your margin, and hopefully help you have a little bit better sales process in a better sales process as you approach your customers. And I don't think when you look at this slide, I don't think anybody's going to argue with me here. Today's MSP market is a lot different than it was even just 5 years ago. The rules have changed. 5 years ago, you could typically go out there and win a deal just by being responsive and being reasonably priced and all of that good stuff. But the market's really shifted towards accountability, and you gotta shift your sales process to match that if you haven't already, because if you don't, you're gonna wind up with a mismatch, and that's where you start seeing margins start leaking away. If you're going out there, in today's market, just leading with price, guess what? You're positioning yourself as a vendor, and vendors get compared. But if you go out there and establish value and show them a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, you really position yourself as an advisor. And guess what? Advisors get trusted, and hopefully they're going to win a little bit more deals. Like I said, it's a much different market. And I hear this all the time when I'm talking to MSPs. It's gotten really complex. And, I'm actually kind of glad I sit on the vendor side of things rather than the MSP side, because you guys got a whole lot of headaches to deal with. That is for sure. And we're going to hopefully show you how we might be able to reduce some of those headaches as we go. All right. So Price is a weak opener, proof isn't. Remember this one. If you remember nothing else that we talk about today, please remember this. Price is a weak opener, but proof isn't. The moment you open with pricing, guess what? You've given up control of the conversation and given control to the customer because that discussion is now going to be how much, or can we compare you to XYZ? Can you match this, like you just mentioned, Steve? Can you trim this down, like you just mentioned, Steve? Can you pull this out of the deal to make it cheaper? It's not a leadership conversation, it's a shopping conversation. Proof is a lot different. Proof changes the emotional temperature in the whole conversation. When a prospect starts seeing evidence that you've put out in front of them and you start explaining consequences as a result of what you've found, you start creating alignment and then you get the customer in a whole different mindset to where they're not discussing price. That's why proof is so important. And we're going to kind of talk about how you establish that proof through what we call phased sales sequencing. This is primarily designed to help you control the sales process, control that sales conversation, and it allows you to establish value before you even start talking about price. And when you do this, you're going to wind up protecting your margin. And again, this is really about controlling that conversation, establishing value. And the way you do this is you go out there and you establish or you create, go out and take a look at their environment to collect evidence because evidence becomes proof. And in our situation, we're talking about visibility into risk exposure, visibility into data sprawl, liability gaps, insurance risk. Once you collect all of that evidence and can show that, and then you want to build and quantify the consequences that could exist if you don't take care of some of these things, such as downtime cost, compliance exposure, reputational damage, different things like that. So you go out, collect the evidence, you quantify what the results are if you don't do something about the things that were found, and then you can present the value and how you're going to help protect that particular customer and reduce their risk, reduce their liability, different things like that. Then you can start talking price or the investment. You're going to, it's all about just controlling that whole conversation so that price becomes secondary to everything else that you're talking to that customer about. You really want to go out there and build that value. Then you can start talking price. And I think the easiest way, rather than just talking a bunch of words and listen to me rumble on, is kind of created an incredibly simplistic scenario here, kind of calling it a tale of two MSPs. We got two MSPs. We got MSP A and we've got MSPB,
Oh,
and they've got the same tool set. They're talking to the same prospect in the same market, all of that good stuff. But if you see, we're going to take a look at MSPA first, and they're going to go out there and kind of do it the old way. And then we're going to look at MSPB, who goes through the sales sequencing. And let's take a look and see what the differences here are. And, you know, the only real difference between these two is how they answer one simple question. And that question is, and it's the question that comes from the customer, all right, what's your per user price? And MSPA very quickly goes out there and says, you know what, we've done all types of market research, and $155 per user is our standard per user price. And guess what? All that market research they did and everything else like that, they literally just threw their leverage away by just going out there with price without really finding out what that customer was all about, what their environment was all about, all of that stuff. So that leverage has disappeared. But what else has happened is, there's something happening emotionally with the buyer. The buyer at this point is only thinking about that 155 bucks, that $155 price point. And there's like, hmm, we only pay 135 now, so I wonder, maybe we ought to compare these guys to somebody else. And
yeah.
you got a delta now at 20 bucks, and that's what at this exact moment, this entire deal became about $20 and nothing else. And guess what else happened? It creates tension. Not the tension that you as an MSP wants, because that tension is on you, not the customer. So this is what I call bad tension. And what happens to MSPA is they are now forced to defend their position. They're not selling anymore. They're actually just defending. And the deal shifts to talking about a tool comparison. The scope starts breaking down. You got to justify everything that's out. Whoops, too many clicks. Justify every feature that's out there. And the customer starts asking for discounting. So, again, the tension is now on the MSP because they're no longer selling. They're having to defend their position. That's not a fun place to be. Doesn't mean they're not gonna win the deal. Many still do win the deal, but, just how profitable are they and how much back end work is created is the big question. So in this case, let's just say that the deal was won at $142 per user, but the scope of the deal got adjusted down. The overall security got negotiated down, so the customer is not as protected as the MSP would like them to be. Customer ends up signing for a 1-year term, which, in some cases, that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not. But in my opinion, it's not because you're going to have to do this all over again in 11 months, assuming you're going to start talking about this deal 30 days before it expires, and the customer is going to negotiate you down again. And if you go in there with the same type of process, you're going to continue to leak additional margin out of there, which many MSPs cannot afford to do. Now, the difference is let's take a look at MSPB, who approaches this whole situation a little bit different. The customer, what's your per user price? And MSPB comes out there and says, you know what? Most of our clients fall between 150 to 190 bucks depending on their risk exposure, and I'd really like to dive in and understand what your environment looks like before we start talking about price. And some people say this is avoidance, but it's really not avoidance. It's framing the conversation, and it really does three different things. It does answer their question. You've thrown a ballpark out there of 150 to 190, and it reframed that price as a variable. But what it really did is it's given you the right to go in there and kind of diagnose, collect evidence, establish value before you hone in on a specific price point. Not only that, the other thing you're doing is you're changing the emotional state of the buyer from focusing on price, and again, tension starts entering into this deal. And that tension this time is not on you. It's really going to be on the buyer because they're going to start thinking about, wait a second. They want to get there and take a look at our environment and our risk exposure. So I wonder if there's something out there we don't know about, and they mentioned exposure. What type of exposure? How are we exposed? Where are we exposed? What exactly are we discussing here? And then they may also be taking a look at the delta between that 150 to 190 and wondering, I wonder if we're going to be at the low end or are we going to be at the high end. But the whole thing here is you've changed the entire conversation because you're now controlling it and you're creating that leverage with this particular customer. And along with that leverage, like I said, you're creating some tension for the customer because they're starting to think of things such as, is our insurance at risk? Oh, downtime. What would downtime cost us if we were down for a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks? Like I said earlier, just how exposed are we? You've created that leverage, and that leverage is exactly what you want as you continue into this conversation. And, the entire meeting has changed at this point because, again, you're not talking about price, you're talking about reality. And that's what reality is what business owners care about. They don't care about tools, they don't care about techno jargon, at least none of the ones that I've met do. They care about exposure. They care about what liability is out there. They care about downtime and what it would cost their company. And they also are concerned about cyber insurance. Look, we all know insurance is getting tougher and tougher. They're asking more and more questions. They want more and more proof. Um, and accountability, risk. When you create, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here, when you identify the risk before you start talking about price, you end up creating urgency, and urgency allows you to position your value to the prospect and what you're going to do to help control things. Obviously, MSPB wins the same deal that we were just talking about with MSPA, but they got very different results. They made a little bit more money at this because the deal closed at 172 per user. They didn't really have to do a lot of discounting. They were able to retain the scope. And in this case, the customer actually came to them and said, "Hey, we want a 3-year deal. We like the terms that you've put out here. We like what you're doing. So let's do a longer term deal." So again, guys, this is a very simplistic example that we threw out there, but I just kind of wanted to talk to you about how framing everything and creating that sequence and controlling the conversation can definitely work to your benefit. And here's just kind of a quick summary of what these 2 deals look like and, which one do you prefer to be, MSPA or MSPB? So, you're actually talking about a difference of about $21,000 a year in gross margin dollars. So, it's pretty powerful stuff when you use it correctly. Steve, did
And
you
not only are you making more than 20,000 more a year, the total deal size is over 300% because you were able to convince them or maybe even they convinced you to do 3 years instead of 1.
you got it. You got it. And that's what you want. I'm assuming as an MSP owner, I can't imagine somebody walking away from something like that. So
Mm.
keep in mind, sequencing helps you create leverage. Visibility helps create value. Value helps you win deals, and sales sequencing, it's not a script. That's why I said you can't take this presentation and just, apply it to everything. You've just got to kind of open up your mind to thinking about this, thinking about controlling that conversation, thinking about how you create leverage. And that's where Cavelo comes in. We try to do some thought leadership here, but obviously I want to talk about Cavelo and how we apply to all of this. And I like to say that Cavelo is the MSP's best friend because we help you. You can't price risk if you can't see it. And if you cannot go out there and identify where sensitive data lives, if you can't show who's got access to sensitive data, and if you can't quantify what the exposure is in business terms, then you got some issues. But we're going to help turn all of that on. Seeing risk changes your pricing power. And Cavello's, no, this is not how to sell more. It's just how to help you stop defending what your price is and give you the evidence that you need to build the value for your customers. Evidence creates authority, authority creates leverage. And, we've done a couple of things over the years. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is Cavelo Flash. Cavelo Flash is we call it a prospecting tool because it really does kind of help you go out there and open up the door with prospects and customers. And it really is your that first meeting you have with them. This is that weapon that helps differentiate you from the competition, enables you to delay that price conversation while you're going out there and collecting evidence that you need to build the value. So, what is Flash? We're helping you control the first meeting so that price isn't the first conversation you have. Flash is an agentless risk posture assessment that's designed to go out there and help you identify where there is exposure on sensitive data. So, we're talking like PII, PHI, CUI, if you're CMMC, we can go out there and see all of that data. And we're going to be able to identify who's got access to it, all of that good stuff, and show you exactly where the data is, who's got access to it, and help you identify any potential gaps that you may have. And then we're also going to help you translate all of this into conversations that you can have with your customers. This is a tool not designed to replace your stack, but to really just kind of give you some authority before you just start discussing pricing. And we give you the ability, you've got a fantastic report that you can put in front of your customers that shows them exactly what you've discovered. And we really want this to be known as the tool that kind of helps you change that first or the tone of the first meeting that you have with your prospect. So if Cavelo Flash is designed to open the door, Cavelo 360 is the tool or the platform that you can use for continuous visibility into managing risk and also managing your profitability. And it really enables you to kind of come out there and and provide things that perhaps you're not providing currently, such as advanced security services, continuous risk monitoring, compliance posture reporting. And it's also going to help you hopefully be able to create a little bit more customer stickiness because customers, look, they become sticky when they're provided with ongoing value, and that's exactly what we're doing here is we're helping you show your customers ongoing value because you can go out there and make sure that that sensitive data is protected, that the risk is managed, and give your clients confidence that you are actively managing all of that risk, which is going to build trust with those customers. In addition, our partners are showing us that they've got lower support cost. They're getting operational efficiency, less wasted time, less wasted resources because our platform enables and shows so much information to the technicians that are working on this. Oftentimes, we hear MSPs complaining about they've got level 3 technicians that based off of the tool set that they've got and things like that, they're actually, unfortunately, doing level 1 technician work. Well, we kinda reverse that. We give so much visibility into what's going on that now level 1 techs are doing some of the same things that level 3 techs can do, which frees up those more expensive techs into going out there and, or resources, not just techs, and finding new business deals. So, just to kind of close things up here real quick, Cavelo Flash is your first meeting weapon that helps change the game, helps you provide the proof that you need to create the leverage, and then hopefully help you create that new revenue acquisition fast and easy. And then it's a perfect segue into Cavelo 360, which helps you consolidate your stack, reduce your tool set, reduce some of your headaches, all that operational drag that you've got going on. It's going to help you govern and manage risk continuously. And more importantly, it's really going to help you preserve your margin, protect your revenue, and hopefully enable you to expand that revenue. And really, we kind of look at our platform as something that can change the economics of the relationship that you've got with your customer. So, Steve, that's really kind of what I got. If anybody would like to see a demo with our team, this QR code, I promise you, is a valid QR code that takes you out to a demo link to where you can book a demo with us. We'd love to show you our two different tool sets that we've got here. And with that, Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk about alternative payments, which incidentally, I don't know if I told you this, but I think we are taking a look at alternative payments as one of our new payment providers that we want to be using with Cavelo Flash.
Yeah. So, I mean, that should show you guys something. Larry, first of all, I just want to say, I do have a poll up. If you guys don't like demo QR codes, you can just answer the demo. And I'm sure Larry and the team over at Cavella would really appreciate that. So, um, Larry, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop so you can take control here.
Oh, no, all good. So the whole framework he just walked you through is about earning the right to name your price by leading with risk instead of leading with a quote, right? That idea of controlling the conversation before you ever talk dollars is something we think about on the back end too, uh, after you've already won the client. So let me take 2 minutes and show you what alternative payments does. Share screen.
There we go. I see you.
You do, but they don't. I forgot about that other thing that always disappears on me. There it is, show webinar. Now I see the buttons. Sorry, guys. There you go. All right. So, alternative payments is an accounts receivable automation platform built specifically for MSPs. We handle the entire collection cycle from invoice delivery through auto pay through reconciliation. So your team isn't chasing payments manually. We work with MSPs of all sizes. Some of our clients you might recognize: Sage IT, Valiant, Granite, Team Logic IT. One of the biggest things that MSPs tell us, it makes the biggest difference. It's the client portal. Your clients get a branded portal where they can view every invoice, manage their payment methods, turn on auto pay. It's clean, it's simple. It removes the friction that causes late payments in the first place. For you, it means fewer, "Hey, did you get my invoice emails?" For your client, it feels like you've got your act together, which, if you're following Larry's framework, is exactly the impression you want to make. The real power is in the automation. So, alternative payment syncs two ways with your PSA: ConnectWise, Autotask, Halo, SuperOps, and with your accounting software: QuickBooks, Xero, FreshBooks, plenty of others. When an invoice is created in your PSA, we pick it up, we send it, we collect payment on the due date via auto pay, we mark it paid in the PSA and in the accounting platform. We create the deposit in your accounting tool. We handle any credit card fee entries as needed, and it will match up to your bank feed when you download that automatically. So that's the full AR cycle. No more manual steps. Our partners are eliminating around 80% of their manual AR work. They're saving an average of 3% on credit card processing fees just by convincing their clients to switch to ACH. They're getting paid faster because the system just runs. Setup is handled by our onboarding team. They will migrate all of your existing customer payment data without breaking any PCI DSS compliance. Most MSPs are fully live within a couple weeks. So, now my ask: if any of you are curious how other MSPs are automating accounts receivable without adding headcount, or uh, just getting paid faster, let us show you how. All right, I've got my poll up. The selling is done. You guys, I would appreciate if you answered the poll, but I'm sure we've also got some questions. So, uh, I'm going to call this AMA. Ask me, ask us anything. It can be about our products and platforms. It can be about sales. It could be about my drums. Whatever you guys want to ask, pop it into the chat. We will answer those questions for you. Meanwhile, let me put let me put us back on the screen. There we go. Meanwhile, I have some questions, Larry.
I've got so many windows open, I have no idea where us is, so I'm just gonna let you go with it and assume I'm out there.
It's all good. You're out there. All right, so you talked about like a five-phase sequence, right?
Yep.
Control, diagnose, quantify consequences, position, then price. Where do most MSPs actually fall apart in that sequence?
Typically where most MSPs are falling apart is just, throwing the price out there too quick, because once you do that, you've lost control of the conversation. So that's why I was stressing, you know, go out there and you can answer the customer's question when they ask, what is your, per user price, or what is this going to cost me? Give a range because you're answering the question, but you're also kind of buying yourself time by
Mhm.
explaining that, here's the range that our typical customer falls in, and here's what impacts where you fall in that range, and that is your environment. We need to take a quick look. You need to go out there, and I've got the perfect tool, Cavelo Flash, can go out here and take a look at your environment and give me a snapshot of what you look like. And that snapshot is usually a pretty good one-time assessment on where you guys stand. And then we can kind of drive into what your exact price is gonna be as a result of that. So it allows you to kind of go out there and establish some value before you really hone in on an exact price point.
That makes sense. All right. Um, the visibility meeting concept. So what's that actually look like? Can you walk us through like the first 5 minutes?
The what concept? I'm sorry?
Didn't you have like a specific meeting concept?
Oh, yeah, 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 absolutely. Visibility, at least from what we're talking about, visibility into the risk exposure, visibility into the sprawl that may exist, because oftentimes we've had partners come to us say that they've had customers that they've gone out there and the customer thinks they've got everything under control, yet the MSP has gone out there using our tool set and run assessment reports and shown the customer that, hey, did you know you've got some sensitive data over here on this environment, and you still have a former employee who's got access to some of this sensitive data? And it's things like that that customers think they've got under control that oftentimes they don't. That is really, really eye opening, and it scares the crap out of the customer, quite honestly, because you obviously don't want to have a former employee who's got access to any type of information on the network. Yet sometimes things do fall through the cracks, and that's just one example of many that we've got out there. But that visibility is what we kind of call evidence, and evidence kind of just becomes proof. And the reason I kind of bring this up is that there's so many that, when you're talking cybersecurity and everything that's going on with cybersecurity, they sell on fear. And you don't want to be selling on fear. You want to be selling on proof, because proof is going to be a lot more powerful than anything else you can throw out there. So, if you can get the proof and then you can take a look at what you've found and you can put some consequences to that and say, here's what we found, here's what happens if you don't address some of these issues that we found. This is what could happen to your business. Here's how we can help you mitigate all of that. And then you get into this is how much it would cost you to do it.
All right. And then people are going to object, right? They're going to say, "So how much does this cost?" "Oh, well, 150, 190. Nobody knows." "Well, I mean, all these other people gave me a quote right away. Why can't you?" They're gonna think you're being shady.
You're right. Some of them may think you're being shady, but really what's happening here is, those that are throwing the price out are the ones that aren't really digging. Let me rephrase that. The ones that are throwing the price out right away are typically the ones that are not going out there and establishing or taking a look at what's out there and establishing the value. And in the long run, what may end up happening is, even though that price that got thrown out there may be the more attractive price to the customer, in the long run, it may end up being a little bit more expensive, simply because MSPA didn't dig all the way in there and find what they needed to find to put an accurate price quote out. And on top of that, that customer may not be as protected as they need to be as a result of them not doing their homework and getting in there and taking a look at the environment and determining what risk exists.
So let's dig into that a little more, Larry. So MSPA is not uh we'll be mean because MSPA is none of you guys, right? MSPA is not doing a very good job. They don't go out and like assess their prospects. Okay. So we go out, we use Cavelo Flash, or maybe you use some other tool that is a very quick, hot thing, like Rapid or so, or some other tool to assess your clients, right? Uh, Whatever, but at least you're assessing your clients. Maybe you just put eyeballs on a server and look like, How messy is Active Directory? Oh my gosh, I'm showing my age. How 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 messy is Entra ID or whatever with their Microsoft 365? How many people have global admin? You know, how many people are signing in as local admin on their computers? You know, you want to figure out at least some basics. What kind of software do they have running? Maybe you just deploy your whole RMM agent across the whole network. I know, so many MSPs will do this different ways, whether it's Cavelo Flash, the RMM agent, something else, right? Where they want to understand the network. They want to see. Oh, we walked around and we counted 25 computers, but there's three extra computers that are online right now. If I look at the firewall, where are these computers? And you know, we joke and we talk about the drywall that went up and they left a server behind it, right? So, um, there's all these things you got to watch out for. And if you just go in and blindly quote them, you're doing everyone a disservice. You really
Yeah,
are. You're screwing yourself over because you quoted them, and if you didn't do any legwork to figure out what they've got going on there, you didn't quote them right. You didn't quote them
right.
enough. You missed something. You don't know what. You're gonna find out in 90 days. And by then it's way too late. You've already deployed, you've already invested time and money and licenses. They've already signed, they've already agreed to a price. So now what? Do you eat it? Do you go back to them and say, "Well, we were contracted for this, you actually have that, so here's the difference." And at that point, now you're hurting that relationship real close to the beginning, right? You're breaking that trust, which is still being built.
Precisely. And on top of it, you're leaking margin because of you not doing enough homework and find out what's going on. That's why,
Yeah.
I mean, we lead with the statement, you can't protect what you can't see.
Mhm.
And that's the gap that many MSPs have right now is, you know, traditionally MSPs are used to protecting the network and devices and different things like that. But really, the bad threat actors out there, they don't give a damn about the devices. They don't care about the network. They care about the data. The data is
Mhm.
where the money is, and unfortunately, too often when we talk with MSPs and say, "All right, let's take 5 of your clients right now. Do you know where all of their sensitive data is, and do you know who has access to it?" And
Mhm.
sadly, sometimes people just look at us like a deer in the headlights and like, "No, we're just kinda taking care of the network. We thought the customer's taking care of all the data." Well, guess what? The customer probably is not taking care of the data like they think they are, and that's where our tool enables the MSP to kinda go in there and establish the facts, establish the proof. They can go in there and say, "Okay, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, here's a quick map of your network. Here's all of the assets out there," because we do have asset discovery built in. Then let's take a look and show you where all the sensitive data is on these devices that we just found. So here's all your sensitive data. And by the way, did you mean for Steve to have access to the payroll data for the entire
Mhm.
company? And all of a sudden they're like, wait, Steve shouldn't have access to that. Well, guess what? We're showing you that he does. So customers don't usually know where everything is or who's got access to it or what software they're running on their machine. And we give them that visibility into all of those things. And like I like to say, it's really just it's visibility into what's going on, but really what it is, it's visibility into making sure that you're not leaking profit to your customers, different things like that.
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure I could ask more questions. Does anyone else have questions that they'd like us to ask or to answer, I guess I should say? Okay.
Going once,
So
going
you're
twice.
you're 20 years into watching MSPs win and lose deals. What's the one thing that hasn't changed across all those years? The thing that's been true in every era?
That's a really good question. Um, One thing that hasn't changed, well, and I can confidently say this, in all of the MSPs that I've worked with, we've got an incredibly unique ecosystem. And I haven't met anyone in all of my dealings that isn't at least trying to do the right thing by the customer. I've never seen anybody just, maliciously out there trying to harm a customer, different things like that. I'm sure it has existed before. But the one thing that holds true is that regardless of how you're doing things, regardless of how your pricing strategy works, regardless of what tools you're using or different things like that, or how you do things from open to close, MSPs, for the most part, are out there just trying to do their best and try to help their customers. And that's what, we as vendors are trying to do is to help our MSP partners as well so that they can do their job better, that they can protect their margin, they can make more money, they can make sure their customers are protected and that they don't wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning not being able to sleep because they're wondering about, is sensitive data protected for all of my customers, different things such as that. So, like I said, Steve, it's kind of hard to say one thing, concretely against every deal I've ever seen. But, the biggest thing is I just really like working in this channel and how people are always trying to help their customers and how at least most of us vendors are trying to help MSPs as well. And that's exactly what we're doing here at Cavelo.
100%. That's what we're doing here at Alternative Payments as well. Larry, next week is Exchange.
Next week is Exchange and Zero Trust World at
Oh
ThreatLocker.
boy.
Back to
Which one
back.
are you going to? Both?
Both.
Oh man.
Both. Since they're both in Orlando, I'll be at Exchange Sunday through Wednesday, and then I'll be at Zero Trust World late Wednesday through Friday.
Which one I'm gonna ask a mean question. Which one's more fun?
That's one of
Here's
those
where you're supposed to
questions.
say they're both fun in their own
Well,
special
that's what I was
way.
about to say. That's one of those questions that you could get me in trouble. They're both equally fun. We have a great time. They're both in Orlando. The only bad part of that is you got to go through the Orlando airport, which is never fun. And if any of you have to do it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, they're both equally fun, and I love working with both organizations because they're both fantastic organizations, and they really do a good job of putting on great events that provide a lot of education to MSPs.
Awesome. Do do you have like is there an after hours event that you're really looking forward to from one?
You know, that you'd be surprised after getting up usually at 5 a.m. and catching up with all the work that you're missing because you're out of the office and then going down and talking with MSPs and other vendors and then putting your booth together and doing the dog and pony show and then going to the lobby bar for cocktails and networking and maybe a dinner after that. The thing I look forward to the most is getting back to my hotel room for just a few hours of sleep and just relax and be quiet for a couple hours before you have to go and do it again the next day. How's
And
that for being a
that's
party pooper?
no, man, that's what I can tell from that. That tells me that you've been doing this long enough. You've figured out what actually works.
Yep, you got it.
You've figured out how far can you push your body to where the next day you can wake up and still be like on your A game because I mean that's the one I'll call it problem with some of these events is some of these events go so late. You know, they've got the evening event and then they've got the after party and then they've got the after party and then you know someone's probably got a party in their room and it just feels like an escalation after a while after escalation to where now now it's 1 in the morning, you're going to sleep, you need to be downstairs by, I don't know, 7:30, 8 o'clock for breakfast and mingling, and what you still have all the work you gotta do that I mean, you're at a conference, sure, but there's still other things that you're responsible for, so
Oh, absolutely, and I'm guilty of all of the above, the after parties, the after party,
yeah.
the sweet parties, I've done it all, but I gotta tell you, it's fun to go to these events, there's no doubt. I enjoy look, this is a relationship business, and,
Mhm.
being face to face with your partners and talking with them and getting to know them, and, I've made tremendous friends, in this channel over the past 24 years of doing it. I wouldn't change it for the world, but at the end of the day, it's always nice to kinda get that quiet time once you go back to the hotel room and just kinda veg out for just a little bit before you do it all over.
100%.
Plus, my
Well,
voice isn't the
Larry,
same as it used to be. It gives out after talking too much, as you can tell here on this.
wow, you sound the same to me. AI is gonna make you sound perfect the whole way through, it's great.
Now, if A well, I guess AI could make me look better too, but, then that's just a lie in and of itself.
I'll see what I can do for you. Well, hey, guys,
I
this
need
has
all the
been
help I can get.
oh, this has been great. Larry, thank you so much. The
You're
the
welcome.
education was fantastic. Cavelo, I love that you guys have built Flash. Check both of our companies out next week for sure at Exchange. Check out Cavelo at Zero Trust World.
Yep.
You guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, Steve. Have a good one now.